Hello, I am a family pastor, John here. And today in our leadership video, we are going to talk about something that's very exciting to me. And it's this whole topic on leadership and culture. I speak to a lot of pastors and ministry leaders and parachurch workers that are curious, like, how do we get a good environment? How does our team work together? How do we all get along? How do we make sure that we're moving in the right direction? And all of those are valid questions. One of the biggest reasons why churches struggle, it's not from a lack of non-Christians in the community. It's typically an internal thing with staff, or they don't know how to function, or they're not scaled, or they're not used to growth or decline, or don't have any momentum. So today we're going to talk about our culture, the environment that you have on your staff team. Now, it's not always a paid staff team. Oftentimes a staff team can be a volunteer staff team. I look back to when we started Freshwater, it was me. Like, I was the guy, and everyone else was a volunteer. But I treated all of our volunteer staff as staff, just like I would anyone else, but I didn't get the hours. They weren't able to put in all the hours because they had other jobs and were raising children. So here's a few tips for you. If you want to get the best team environment that you can get, if you want to get all of your staff and all of your volunteers pulling in the same direction, I want to give you some tips. And first, I'm going to tell you a theory I have, and it's this. It's a simple theory, and I learned it from being right here in Minnesota, that if you are out on the water canoeing, and there's a whole bunch of people in the canoe canoeing, you don't have time to hit each other with a paddle because you're all working in the same direction. But if you don't have anywhere to go and you just start to drift, it's inevitable before someone is going to splash water on someone else and hit someone with a paddle, and before you know it, the whole canoe is going to be tipped over in the middle of the lake. So if you can get all of your team members rowing in the same direction with the same purpose, same vision, same passion, it will get you further faster than if you do it all on your own. So here's my tips for you. First, every leader needs to mind the environment. Mind the environment. You are an environmental caretaker. Just like a farmer looks at their crops and they know when to plant the seed, they know when to go out and spray for weeds, they know when to do some pruning if they do pruning, they knew when to harvest and when to take care of the crops and when to sell them. Farmers understand that natural rhythm. And as a leader, you have to cultivate your team. That means you have to invest in them at certain times for certain reasons. For example, you may have to go through a season where you're educating your staff to deal with a new program or a new ministry, or maybe a larger number of people. Or you might have to onboard someone and help them to fully integrate into the DNA of your church. So they need to understand the culture first. So you have to spend time cultivating your staff. Great leaders cultivate awesome environments. And when they do, people feel empowered to do ministry. They feel valued, they feel secure, and they feel willing that they are doing something significant on the team. On the other hand, if leaders ignore the team environment, then the workplace can very easily become toxic. And small fires become big fires, and big fires burn ministries to the ground. So look out for those small fires, deal with them as soon as you can, so that you can carry on and continue on with the next part of the mission. So how do we create this healthy team environment? First, have a common purpose and shared goals. Have a common purpose and shared goals. I found this kind of interesting, but a long time ago at Freshwater, the church that I still pastor, I asked our staff, now these are the people who are so close to us. I asked our staff, what is our vision statement? Probably 3 could mostly say it, the other 4 could not. And then I said, what is our purpose statement? A handful of people said some key words, and that was about it. And then I got into our core values, and I couldn't even repeat them myself. And I thought, if I can't repeat our core values, if I can't say our vision statement or mission statement or purpose statement, whatever statement you use, that means that you don't have alignment. So you need to bring all of your staff together having a common purpose and shared goals. That's something that you think that you talk about too much, but chances are The rest of your staff and your church doesn't know it. So if you want to get people all pulling in the right direction or rowing in the same direction, you definitely need to have a common purpose and shared goals. Very, very important. Second, encourage a spirit of togetherness. In ministry, oftentimes we can get our own silo approach, meaning this is my ministry. I do youth ministry. I do kids ministry. I'm the teaching pastor. I'm the worship leader. And we get siloed. But a good leader knows that everyone needs to be together on the same team. You have different roles on that team, but there's unity when you come together. And the team needs to understand that they are in it to work together. And when everyone understands they are there to make someone else better, it makes a huge impact on the team. One thing that I've noticed, because I am the senior leader at Freshwater, and I have been there the longest because I'm a long-term, the founding pastor, is that whenever I speak, even in our staff team now, which is larger, that whatever I say pretty much is just going to go. Like, they're going to go with it because I'm the senior leader. So before I make my comments, say we're doing a brainstorming session about Easter services, the music, if we're going to have any props, I'll say this simply just to just kind of lower the tension. If I'm in that group, I say first, guys, I just want to be a part of this think tank with you, and everything I say is written in pencil and has equal weight to the rest of you. And what that does is it lets everyone else in the room speak their mind without knowing that no matter what they say, we're just going to do what I want to do. But I had to create that environment. It doesn't come automatically. So now when we sit around and we talk about Easter or music or Good Friday or Christmas services, or whether we're going to add a service or take one away or add another summer service outside, when we sit at the table, we sit as equals. We sit there and we dialogue and we come up with best practices. And that's because I've told them, look, I'm writing with a pencil. I just want to be a part of this discussion. I'm not going to dictate it. But there is a time, sometimes if maybe there's a stalemate or something, when oftentimes I'll say, well, we need to kick this into next week. And so we kick it into next week. We come back at it, and if we don't have clarity, sometimes I do have to make that final decision. But that's not for lack of trying or lack of wisdom. But you certainly want to encourage a spirit of togetherness. And third is to clarify roles. This is so important. Think of it like this. When people are running a race, say you go to watch a track race, right? And they start out and they're starting to run the 400. You know what people do? They stay in their own lane. If you jump out of your lane, you're actually penalized because they start at different places. And the analogy we use all the time is stay in your own lane. If you run our kids ministry, you should not be working on the maintenance program fixing the roof. Or if you're a maintenance guy, don't tell people in the kitchen how to cook. I mean, yes, we can give ideas and have conversation, but if you try to take over that area, you're not in the right lane, and you need to run in your own lane. Oftentimes this happens with marketing, or it happens with some other area where someone's like, hey, I have this and let's do this. And then the person who's responsible for it actually feels left out, or they can feel steamrolled because, well, you want people to run in their own lane. And you can still do that working as a team, but ultimately the authority and responsibility comes down to the one person. Like the youth pastor, they're responsible for youth. Kids ministry is responsible for kids ministry. If they want input in a brainstorming session, that's great, but don't try to do someone else's job. And this is a fatal mistake that oftentimes pastors make, is that if you have an underperforming staff, rather than dealing with the underperforming staff, you simply step in and do their job. And that only builds resentment with them and frustration with you. So you need to address that fire, that small fire, before it turns into a much bigger fire. And number 4 is communicate openly and effectively. This is so important. Communication is key. If I communicate with you, that's two-way communication, but you add 2 more people in there, now it's going 4 ways. You add 4 more, there's 16 channels of communication. So you can see how complicated communication gets with the more people. And with the more people you have, you actually have to be even more simple and more thorough in your communication so that everyone hears the same message. And once a decision is made by a team or a committee or whoever it's been entrusted to, everyone else needs to follow that decision. I know I do a lot of weddings, and sometimes I have a couple of pet peeves. Like, we go through the wedding, the rehearsal, we get all lined up, we go through the rehearsal, and I've had this happen, I can't even tell you how many times, where typically a mother-in-law says, I think it would be best if we did this. And that's fine, but when they don't tell me, and in the middle of the service, all kinds of other things happen, I'll roll with it. But sometimes it can make the service incredibly messy. One time I did a wedding, they changed the time and didn't tell me. So instead of having the wedding at 6 like they were planning on it, the mother-in-law thought it would be a great idea to move the wedding to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I get a phone call at 4 o'clock that says, where are you, Pastor? I said, I'm right at my house. I'll be there at 6. They said, well, the wedding's at 4 and all the guests are here now. And I just said, bummer for you. Like, nothing I can do. You changed the time and didn't tell me. So I'm not going to eat that one, even though, of course, I apologized profusely when I got there. But tried not to throw the mother-in-law under the bus. But I did give her an eye that said, I wish I would have thrown you under the bus because this isn't my fault. Anyways, let me wrap it up. Be a great team leader by creating clear purpose and developing shared goals with your team. Your team members need to know why they're there. Reinforce long-term positivity by building self-confidence, using affirmation. And let people be creative. Help them to be happy and successful. Because everyone on your own team wants to contribute. Some people want to contribute towards the goals. Others want to contribute towards solving complex problems. But you as a leader have to cultivate the great team that you desire to have. And leader, this one really is on you. You have the unique responsibility and authority to set the tone to create a good culture, a healthy culture. And when you have a healthy culture, it will help you to have a healthy church or a healthy ministry, and that healthy ministry will grow for the glory of God. You have it in you. Now it's your turn. Go and have a healthy culture.